Okay, it's happening. Loading, still loading.
All righty.
It says it's starting. There we go.
Excellent. And it should pop in as the latest post, I would think, right?
Yeah, I already shared it on my page. Here we are.
Oh, okay. I can't find it yet. I'm looking.
There we
Because
are.
people go to the event page, but that's not actually where. I got it. Here we are. Okay, I'm going to share this to my page.
Great.
You look great.
You look great too.
We're live now. All right. And let me shut down the volume. There we go. All right. Looks like we have 8 souls, one of which is probably my mother.
Mine too.
Yes, I know.
Out of those 8, my mother and my father.
I know. Well, I'm hoping my daughter, who lives in Chicago, might be watching.
Yeah,
So
I'm sure. I'm sure a lot of people are gonna watch.
I know, and I'm excited. I have so many friends in Chicago, as you know, and so this is going to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. And I have my water. Okay.
Good.
I'm set.
I think we're ready to get started. Well,
All right.
welcome everyone who is watching to Literary Music Series. My name is Natalie Vargas Nedvetsky. I am the founder and artistic director, and I am so excited about this particular stream tonight because tonight we have Paul Barnes, who is a phenomenal pianist, a phenomenal pedagogue who I've worked with before, who's just absolutely wonderful. And we are going to be exploring some beautiful music, beautiful themes tonight, and I can't wait to dive in. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a gorgeous night here in Lincoln, Nebraska. It's a little bit humid outside, but it's glorious inside the living room. So looking forward to talking with you and playing this beautiful music from some wonderful friends of mine.
Beautiful. Well, let's jump right in, shall we? Tonight, the theme is bright sadness. And when I first heard this, I did not know what it meant, but I learned from you and from a little bit of research that it actually has to do with icons. And it is so rare in musical standpoints to see a depiction of these spiritual, transcendent works of art in the music. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you approach this theme, how the music can be changed by something like this, and how you see bright sadness, those icons, in the music that you're going to play today.
That's a wonderful first question. So, well, first of all, the term bright sadness I first encountered in a very, very wonderful Lenten meditation by Father Alexander Schmemann, one of my absolute favorite theologians on the planet. And it talks about basically the ability of suffering to be transfigured, so that even as difficult and as the suffering that we experience in our lives, that suffering can be transfigured because of the hope, that we all have. And this is something that's a theme throughout so many different, communities. But as we begin our journey, when we begin Lent, and we start our Lenten fast and go through various spiritual disciplines, it's this idea that we know that the joy of the resurrection is our light at the end. And that's one of the reasons that icons have always been an important part of my spiritual life. I think I told you earlier that I did my doctoral dissertation. I went to Indiana University, did my doctorate with Menachem Pressler, and my document was on music as an icon. And the connections that Liszt in particular, was on the B minor sonata, that work had with iconography in terms of the ability of music to communicate spiritual truth in a transcendent way. And that's exactly what the icon is doing as well.
That is beautiful. That is astounding. It's so rare to see that connection. Um, and so, moving forward, how you have a very close relationship with one of the composers, both of the composers, but um, we're starting with Glass here. You have a very close relationship with Philip Glass. And I wanted to know first how you acquainted yourself with his music, and then how you acquainted yourself with him, and how you started this journey, this musical journey with him.
Sure. Well, like all great discoveries, for me, it began at Indiana University. I should really help recruit at this point. So I remember hanging out with some composer friends of mine, and we had this big Koyanis Katsi party. It was completely legal, no issues. And that's when I first heard the incredible energy and meditative quality in Glass's music, and I was absolutely mesmerized, and have been a fan of his music ever since. Well, later on, after I graduated and I was on a job interview at the University of Nebraska 25 years ago, flying home from that job interview, Philip Glass is on the plane with me. You know, he was in Lincoln, Nebraska with Allen Ginsberg. Now, you're way too young to even know who that is, but wait a minute. You're into poetry, so maybe you do know who Allen
Ginsberg is.
60s beatnik poet. And in any event, so I got to meet both of them. But the seat next to Glass was open, and so boom, I zopped right over the aisle. And we started this wonderful conversation, and I told him that I was playing in New York the following season and whether he had any music for me to play. And that's when he whipped out his music director's transcription of Satyagraha. And that was the very first piece of Glass I'd ever played 25 years ago. And that's what began everything. That's what got me interested in transcribing all of his works. You know, I commissioned the piano concerto and, of course, the beautiful quintet that I'll be playing in a little bit. And that's really where it all started. And then since then, we've had all kinds of very interesting conversations on the relationship, for example, of Buddhist chant and Byzantine chant, both of which feature harmonic stasis. This idea that the harmony does not have to move, and that it creates, you know, focus on other musical parameters rather than harmonic progression. And I just went bonkers over that idea and saw how it was connected to all of these ancient chant traditions, and then how it obviously connects to Glass's music.
That is a fateful plane ride.
Great meeting. It was a great meeting. So
that is, and that ties into what we were talking about, how the religious elements and the chants and the concept of bright sadness plays into everything that you're going to perform for us today. And one of those pieces is a piece that you commissioned, as you said, the beautiful piano quintet, Annunciation.
Right.
And you transcribed it for solo piano. And I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about how those, you know, Orthodox, Greek Orthodox and Byzantine influences behind this piece, how the music connects to those influences. And I know that you have a very intimate and personal relationship with Greek Orthodoxy yourself. So if you can explain a little bit about how you approach that and how it plays into Glass's music, your relationship with that. How do you feel that tradition touches the music?
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a great question. I'll go ahead and start with my embracing, you know, of Greek Orthodox tradition. By the way, I don't know if you hear all of the things blowing up outside. You may or may not, depending on how good my mic is. It's July 3rd, and people in Lincoln, Nebraska, go crazy blowing things up to celebrate the Declaration of Independence, and they blow things up on July 3rd and July 4th. So if you hear what sounds like bombs going off, it always reminds me of Dame Myra Hess, you know, as she was playing her Beethoven sonatas while the Nazis were bombing London. So it's going to be a little bit like that. So, and in any event, though, I've been a Greek Orthodox Christian for 25 years, and it was a tradition that I was introduced to primarily and embraced primarily as a musician, because it makes perfect sense for musicians. The main quality is that everything that exists because of an act of divine love. And through that act, and the way that we understand even the existence of God as a Trinity, that the way God exists is even a community of love. And so his act is to share that love with us. And that's what human beings made in the image of God are meant to do. We're simply meant to be little icons of God. And that's what we do with our lives. That's where we find our meaning. But that's also primarily where we find our beauty. I know that the Septuagint translation of the Old Testament in Genesis, when God created the world, and after he created everything, he said, behold, he looked at everything he made, and he said, it was good. And when the Septuagint scholars translated that, they translated from the Hebrew into the Greek. The word that they chose for good was kalos, which can also be translated beautiful. So God and his essence is a creator of beauty, and being made in his image, we're also meant to create beauty. So with the sacramental understanding that we're joined in a physical way, to God, and then the unbelievably beautiful chant tradition, I was just completely hooked. And of course, it involves all kinds of things. It involves fasting and feasts, and so there was a certain rhythm to the way that we're called to live our lives that was also very congruent with my life as a musician. So anyway, Philip Glass was also fascinated with this. And if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll be able to see all kinds of pictures, or my website. I've given 3 icons to Philip Glass at this point, and he loved, especially the one that I gave him of the Annunciation. It was to inspire him as he was writing, this beautiful quintet. And the beginning of the quintet really started with the director of Orange Mountain Music, Richard Guerin, said, Philip has never written a piano quintet. He should write a piano quintet. So that was the initial idea. And then Philip has also never written anything based on Byzantine chant. So in January of 2017, I'm at Philip Glass's house, and I have the communion hymn, and I sing it for him. And he loves it, Yeah. And it was the communion hymn, and I'll be singing it right before I play. It's the communion hymn for the Feast of the Annunciation. And he said, oh my gosh, I can work with this. And so he wrote this beautiful 2-movement quintet that, utilizes the theme in some very, very beautiful ways. I was just fascinated to see how he would transcribe it, how he would harmonize it, And so in the first movement, which I'll be playing, he has 3 complete settings of the hymn in its entirety. First piano, then he gives it to the strings, and then he gives it back to the piano. And then, like a good Western composer, he chops it up and basically derives the rest of the entire piece from small elements, in the theme. The same thing that Victoria Bond does in her piece as well. So that's how it worked with the quintet. And it's been a joy. I recorded it with Brooklyn Rider, and that CD just came out last October. And they were just a ball. And I played it in Chicago with the wonderful members of the Chicago Symphony, and Winston Choi invited me to play, at Roosevelt. And Cornelius Chu, who I went to IU with, played first violin. And I mean, it was an incredible evening where all my Chicago friends came out, except you. You were probably at Juilliard, Turkey.
Oh, I was in college.
That's okay, I know.
Skipped everything and went to see that performance. This is also moving to me.
Well, I'll be playing it in Chicago again on June 24th, assuming that we've got our vaccine and everything, and we're back to getting together again.
Please, government, make it happen so that this can happen.
Yeah.
Wear your masks, everyone. We need this to happen.
We'll get it done.
There's something that was so beautiful what you said about kalos, that word, that it's both good and beautiful. It gives this moral element to the word beautiful, that it's not just external, it's internal. That's gorgeous.
Yeah. And it gives us an idea of what we're really meant to do, with our lives, is that we need to pursue what is beautiful. And that's what we were designed to do. That is our nature. And that is really important to understand when things are as ugly as they are now. So.
Yes. Yes, this is a timely program for right now in many ways. And the Victoria Bond piece, in many ways, in every way, ties into the theme itself in a profound way as well. Can you tell us a little bit? I'm sure the audience really wants to know what Simeron Kremate means.
Yes, well, and it's Simeron Kremate is the first two words of this beautiful Lenten. It's a Holy Week hymn that we sing as we commemorate the crucifixion of Christ. And the text is in the program notes, which you can all get on the event page, and I think you sent those out.
Yeah.
But Simeron is my most favorite Greek word. It means today. And the idea is that when we are gathered together as a worshiping community, time is gone, that we have entered into the eternally present. And so all of these events that happened centuries, millennia ago, they become our existence. This is one of the coolest things about being a human being, is that we get to do this time travel all the time. It's great.
Yeah.
And so anyway, Simeron Kremate, today is suspended on a tree, he who suspended the earth upon the waters. So what it does is this is a meditation on the unbelievable paradox of the creator of the universe hanging, being crucified for us. And the hymn, in the most beautiful way, just explores that painfully beautiful paradox of sacrificial love. And this was the perfect example of bright sadness. Now, the interesting thing is that when I sang this for Victoria, and Victoria and I go back as long as, in fact, even longer than Philip Glass. I recorded her first piano concerto. It's a really cool jazz concerto. She wrote another beautiful piece called Potiri and Soterio, which is the Cup of Salvation, which is another, her first piece that she wrote for me based on a Greek Orthodox chant. So this is her second piece that she's written for me, and I wanted to give her a chant that was very different in terms of quality. But the interesting thing was that the melodic material was exactly the same as a Jewish chant that she was familiar with, the Jewish chant Tal. So I'm going to go ahead and sing a little bit right now since I'm right here, So the beginning of the Simeron chant goes like this. Simeron Kremati epixilu. And then the Jewish chant goes like this. Tal, 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 time, li ratzonaksak. So you can see that they have that same wonderful augmented second. Now, tal, all right, and you're a good Jewish lady, so you know this. It means do. And this is a prayer that's chanted on the first day of Passover, and it is a prayer that God would send dew, to bless the land. And then, of course, we sing Simeron Kremate on Holy Thursday when we are commemorating the crucifixion of Christ. And so what Victoria did was she based the entire piece on those 5 notes. And those are the things. And then she combines the Tal theme later on in the piece with the Simeron theme. So every time you hear those 5 notes, I just think of Simeron. I think of that wonderful time travel that we're called to do, where today is present, where everything is today. And so it's an incredibly enlightened way to live, and also to never forget. And this, I think, is a big problem with human beings, is that we are total amnesiacs. And we forget everything, and that's why it's so important for us to remember who we are every time, and to be reminded who we are as many times as we can. So anyway, that's just a little bit about Simeron. I did want to mention one thing about Potiri, and all of these pieces I've recorded on multiple CDs, and they're on my YouTube channel. But with the Potirian piece that she wrote for me, She also turned that into a piano concerto, and it's a beautiful piano concerto called Ancient Keys that I've recorded as well on my second volume of American Piano Concertos. So it's just been, this Byzantine chant has been an incredibly fruitful field for all of these composers to write, these beautiful pieces.
Yeah. Art is the greatest vessel for this type of time travel.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Because it more so, I mean, reading is great. Reading books is great because, and exploring ideas is great. But when it becomes music, there is nothing that allows you, to kind of experience, a different time and a different culture than hearing the music of that time. And then, of course, today it's so wonderful because there's so much great composition going on. So it's just wonderful that I've been lucky to have all these composer friends that have written these beautiful pieces for me. And I get to play, like I get to play tonight again.
Oh, and I did not know you could sing that well.
Oh,
Wow.
Well, I do it every Sunday. I'm the head chanter at Annunciation Greek Orthodox Church here in Lincoln, Nebraska. So I chant for 2.5 hours every Sunday morning, including Vespers on Saturday, and hopefully we'll get back to having full cycles once COVID is done with. But so yeah, I love singing, and of course, all pianists should sing, right? Don't you agree?
Right, I agree with that. I wish I could sing like you, but that will never happen. How do now that we talked about both the Annunciation and the Simeron Kremate, the selection of them both on this program, how do they speak to each other? How do they interact?
Yeah. This actually is an abbreviated version of a program that I did actually just 2 weeks ago for a theological conference in New York. It was an international music conference. And what I did was there are several composers that have written pieces for me based on Greek Orthodox chant. And so I had an entire recital. But it's not just Orthodox chant. The big Bright Sadness program that I'm doing on September 24th in our recital hall, to an empty crowd, of course, but I'll be doing it anyway, includes chant from multiple traditions. So you may or may not know this about me, but I love Franz Liszt in a big way, all right? And so last year I performed his Via Crucis, his beautiful setting of the 14 Stations of the Cross, at the Liszt Festival at Arizona State University. And so I've created a kind of an abbreviated version of that. So that explores Latin chant. And so I'll be chanting in Latin. I have a very dear friend of mine, Ron Warren, who's Cherokee Indian. He is an incredible musician that plays the second movement of the Glass Piano Concerto, which is based on Sacagawea. And this is Glass writing Native American chant. And he wrote this most beautiful piece for me, which is chant-derived as well. So I have Native American chant, and then I have the Greek Orthodox chant, as well. So I just wanted to be able to explore all of these different chant traditions, including Hebrew, because Victoria's piece, includes Hebrew. And so that'll be a full-length recital that I'll be doing on September 24th. It, of course, will be live streamed. And I'll be playing in our recital hall, which I've missed playing in, on a nice big giant D. So it'll be fun, and I hope you can join me.
I will definitely be there.
You'll be at Peabody, but you still should be able to
I will be there with
watch
my eyes
online
on the internet.
There you go.
And we touched a little bit upon this just a few minutes ago, but how does this music, this vessel, as we talked about, and its cathartic chant background, its heavy religious influence, how can that, I want to know how you think that could speak to us today in this time of just unsettling turmoil and pain? No,
that's a very, very good question. Again, the reason that I have embraced Greek Orthodoxy is the way that it looks at what a human being is. And that really seems to be the basis for a lot of our turmoil, is not really understanding what a human being is. And that creates all kinds of tension in terms of what our goal is, how are we supposed to treat our fellow creatures of God, and that one fact of being created in the image of God, and since tomorrow we are celebrating, the Declaration of Independence, this idea that we have unalienable rights that are given to us by our Creator, these are incredibly unifying things. This is the only thing that can actually bring us together. Mm-hmm. And so I think understanding what it means in essence, as an individual to live your individual human life, that then is going to connect you to other individuals, many of whom are in a completely different place and experience a completely different world, but we understand that we are all a part of this family. And until we understand that, then it will just get worse and more divisive and more ugly and more depressing. So I think one of the things that all of my music friends are doing, we're all trying to play as much as we can. And those are things that immediately unite. And, I'm old now, as you know. And so I don't have to please anyone. I can play whatever I want, and I can play whenever I want. And so I only play things that I'm really passionate about. And I've just been lucky to have Philip Glass, as a friend, and Victoria Bond. David Von Kampen is another young composer that wrote an amazingly cool piece that I'll be playing in September. Matthew Arndt also wrote a piece for me based on the Jesus prayer. That's one of these things that we say with this beautiful little prayer bracelet. Can you see that?
Yeah. Ooh.
That's for the repetition of the Jesus prayer. And he wrote a piece for me based on that meditation. So, and I'm just going to keep doing it until I die.
As we all should. Well, with that being said, I think this is the perfect moment to jump in to the music. So I will mute myself now.
Okay, and I will move the chair and go to the piano.
Yes.
I'll bring this up here. And what I'd like to do is, I'm going to make the speaker view too here. There we go. Okay. What I'd like to do first is chant a little bit more extensively the hymn upon which Victoria's piece. I'll play Victoria's piece first, and then I'll play Philip's piece after that, and that should all work. So I'll sing probably the first 3 lines of the Greek Orthodox hymn, and then I'll sing the Jewish chant, and then after that, I will play Victoria's beautiful piece. Simeron, Kremate, He who suspended the earth in the waters is suspended on a cross. Simeron, Kremate, et pixilus, o entivasi, tingincre masa. Philip Glass. What I'd like to do first of all is chant the communion hymn that started everything. And this is a communion hymn that's based on Psalm 133. The text in English is, "The Lord has chosen Zion. He has desired her for his dwelling place." So think about this beautiful text from the Hebrew Psalms, and then this is understood as, being about the Virgin Mary, as she becomes the dwelling place of God. So this is the communion hymn, and you'll hear, again, this presented 3 times in its entirety throughout that first movement, and then he'll break up parts of it. I should mention one thing about the opening progression. I just got this, I just did the premiere in 2018 in April, and the piece begins with what I have affectionately called the love progression. And it's something that Philip Glass used all the way back in his opera Orphée. And what a great legend, Orphée. And so anyway, that progression that he uses in Orphée goes like this: F major, A minor, B flat major, and then that warm D flat major. That's where you fall in love. And he uses that progression like a leitmotif. So it comes throughout all of these wonderful moments in the opera where love triumphs. And so it's always been meaningful. And that was one of the first major works that I transcribed for piano, the Orphée Suite for piano. And that's one of my most popular streaming pieces, of all time. So anyway, when I heard the beginning of the quintet, he actually used those exact same chords, and he brings back the chord progressions in really, really beautiful ways throughout the piece. So I was absolutely thrilled. So this is the communion hymn upon which the quintet is based. Kyrios tin Sion, irete sancto asti, is catechivan And this is my solo transcription of the first movement of Philip Glass Piano Quintet, Annunciation. Isn't it a beautiful piece?
Wow. Do you have the score to both of those pieces? I really want to play them.
Well, I just got an email from a friend of mine in Prague
Uh-huh.
who wants to do the quintet, and I had exclusive rights to it for 2 years. That's expired. But I just talked to Philip Glass's publisher, and it is not, you can imagine how crazy things are.
Right.
So it's not quite ready yet for publication, but it will be soon. And when it is, it will be great to have everybody on the planet playing it. Because it's really beautiful with the strings, too. The second movement is to die for. Oh my gosh. So it's great fun.
This entire program was astounding. The playing, the connection to the chant elements, the connection to your own personal relationship with both the composers, and orthodoxy, which is such a big influence. This was so beautiful. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you in person sometime. And I hope your mom and dad will come to my next recital in Chicago. But it probably won't be until June. I'll be doing 2 back-to-back evenings in Chicago.
Well, if it's next June, then I will very much try to be there.
You'll be there. That sounds great.
100%. Thank you so much for everything. This was so beautiful, and wow. Well, for the Literary Music Series audience, we will see you next week. And to you, I hope to see you soon, and thank you.
Great. Thank you all. Have a great evening and have a wonderful 4th of July.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.